Once again, as I told you, now I will briefly discuss with you Donne's imagery. To begin with, the unmissable aspect of Donne's imagery is the use of conceits. That's something especial to Donne's love poetry. What is a conceit? It is a fantastic, unusual simile. What happens in a conceit that the poet manages to discover some dissimilar, manages to discover, establish, or identify similarity in apparently dissimilar subjects. Now, I give you the examples which will illustrate the point. Look here, Robert Burns' very famous line, "My love is like a red, red rose." The simile is self-evident. The association of love with rose hardly needs any elaboration. However, in the sun rising, the lover's universe is compared to the simile used for that is the two hemispheres of the universe, and these two hemispheres are without sharp north, that's without cold weather, or without declining west, where the sun never sets. That's a perfect example of a conceit. Geographical hemispheres and the warmth and the permanence and the perfection of love, they are apparently totally dissimilar, and that's what conceit is. Another conceit is in the poem The Flea. The body of the fly is compared to the marriage, not only to marriage bed but to the marriage temple. That's again perfect conceit. Then in the sun rising, the beloved's bed is compared to the universe, and its walls are described as the spheres of this universe. So these are just some of the examples of the conceits used by Donne that makes his poetry special. Special in what? Special in the sense of the unification of sensibility, thought and feeling blended together. How does he achieve this blending of thought and feeling? I give you some more example. For example, in the poem In Valediction, Forbidding Mourning, that's the title of the poem, the lovers, they are compared to a compass. As you know, compass is a geometrical instrument, apparently nothing to do with love, but the proximity of the lover and the beloved is brought home with reference to the legs of the compass. That's what we say unification of sensibility, thought and feeling, they are blended together. Same as I just mentioned to you, the marriage bed or temple, and then the fly's body. Once again, unification of sensibility is there. Right. In the poem The Good Morrow, the seven sleepers, then the seed discoverers, they are again an example of this unification of sensibility. What he wants to Donne, what he wants to convey, he conveys it very convincingly, cogently, and with the help of telling examples and arguments. Right. Another example of this unification of sensibility is the negative portrayal of the sun. You recall the poem The Sun Rising? So many pejorative, negative terms, epithets are used of the sun as a saucy, pedantic, wretch. That's another perfect example of unification of sensibility. Likewise, in the same poem, Rags of Time, a telling pictorial representation of the units of time. In canonization, this feature, this quality of the unification of sensibility appears at its highest, at its sharpest. All the images, that's flies, tappers, eagle, dove, and phoenix, all of these are representative of this unification of sensibility in terms of the fact that thought is very graphically conveyed with the help of powerful feelings and emotions. Right. I was just mentioning to you the artistic, dexterous use of conceits in Donne's love poetry. So you see what Helen Gardner has to say. He says, in a metaphysical, I quote, in a metaphysical poem, the conceits are instruments of definition in an argument, are instruments to persuade, that's to convince. The poet has something to say which the conceit explicates. The metaphysical conceit aims at making us concede justness while we are admiring its ingenuity. That's the function, that's the purpose of conceit. Another remarkable thing about these conceits are these images are that these are reflective of the new learning. 17th century was the age of new learning. So whether it is alchemy, optics, law, medicine, scientific theories, geography, trade, commerce, even taxation, images taken from these domains appear in Donne's poetry. So Donne's imagery stands out for its both variety and newness of sources. Other poets may also have various sources, but in Donne's case, what is remarkable is the newness, his inventiveness. He goes to such lengths which are generally beyond one's imagination. Right. So I will now refer to some examples. For example, in the flea, temple, and the marriage bed, that's a remarkable imagery. In the good morrow, seven sleepers' den, and the seed discoverers, the idea of microcosm and macrocosm. He is not like the seed discoverer because he is happy, content with his microcosm, and then the images used by Donne, they stand for their novelty. No one has spoken of the sun as someone saucy, pedantic, rich, right. Then another remarkable use of imagery is in canonization. The very metaphor of canonization in itself is outstanding. It is something unattempted in poetry, what to say of love poetry. So these are some of the remarkable points. And as I was mentioning to you, the list of Donne's sources for his imagery, that's very extensive. Reference to war, military affairs, death, law, politics, medicine, fire, heat, business, the human body, all these, and of course, astronomy, religion, learning, these, superstition, faith, name any domain of human thought and activity, that's reflected in Donne's imagery. It appears somewhat morbid, but He has drawn certain images from disease and death. So that again is something very amazing, and that makes Donne different from other poets. So the point which you should keep in mind about Donne's imagery, what's special, is that he identifies intellectual analogy with his emotion. Emotions are perfectly balanced with intellectual thought, and that's what the saying goes. One a critic's oft quoted remark to Donne, thought was an experience. Whatever mental ideas are there, these are articulated with the in the form of very touching, moving feelings. Right, and that's what gives us a sense of discovery, pleasure, exaltation, and the reader feels a kind of identification with the poem. At times, of course, this such conceits or such imagery, they tend to become obscure, difficult to decipher, but that's what these images, they bring together the opposites of life, whether the body and the soul, earth and heaven, and the bed of lovers and the universe. Life has many these juxtapositions, and that's to Donne's credit that he brings these together. Right. And the best example of this use of juxtaposition is in his conceit. So, to sum up, Donne's imagery remarkable on many counts. One is its this sources. Sources are both new and extensive. Next point is Donne's imagery that achieves unification of thought and feeling, another very significant point. And finally, the final point about Donne's imagery is that it helps us identify ourselves with the poet's point of view. So, intellectually convincing, and this unification of sensibility, that's an outstanding feature of Donne's imagery. It is remarkable for its freshness, for its inventiveness, for its diversity. So go back to the prescribed poems, note note down the images, and you would enjoy the diversity, variety, and freshness of these images. Okay, thank you very much.